Good morning again. Thank you so much for being here at Grace Bible Church. I'm glad that you have made your way here to sing these songs to the Lord and to spend some time in His Word and be together this morning. You know, we've been going through the book of Ecclesiastes, and we are halfway there. We're halfway through the book of Ecclesiastes, and the first half of the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon again, the whole book is kind of written in a bad mood until you get to the very end. If you're someone that wants to know what's going to happen at the end, you can jump ahead and figure out that it all ends well in Ecclesiastes. But up until the very end, he's pretty much in a bad mood, and he's kind of describing just the things in life that don't make sense, especially for those of us who believe in the Lord. Sometimes it almost comes across as though he does not believe in God, but that's just the opposite of what's happening. The fact that he believes in God is what's creating so much problems for him, because he sees so many things wrong in the world. And if God is in control, if God is sovereign, why are things so challenging? Why is life so hard? Why is it so hard to be satisfied? And that's really the second half of the book really deals with this whole idea of what does it take to be satisfied in life. Now, it's pretty well documented that here in the United States, we have a problem with painkillers. I came across some stuff just to kind of maybe highlight, maybe something you hear about, but you don't really understand how big the problem is. 90 people every day, 90 people die from overdose of prescription drugs in the United States every day. The U.S. makes up 4% of the world's population, yet we consume 80% of the world's painkillers. Isn't that amazing? Oxycodone, the United States consumes 99% of all the oxycodone produced in the world. That's how much our society depends upon prescribed painkillers. Now, here's the thing. You can find a lot of press about this, about painkillers and the harm they have on society and families and individuals. And we should talk about it. It should be out there. But nobody talks about the happiness killers. It could be that if we dealt with the things that kill happiness in our life, that we may not need the painkillers so much. And we don't spend a lot of time talking about that. There was a guy named John Clements. He's a journalist for the Wall Street Journal, and he said this in one of his articles. He said, "We may have life and liberty, but the pursuit of happiness isn't going so well." And that's true for a lot of people. We live in the most comfortable, one of the most comfortable, if not the most comfortable nations in the world. We have more than literally everyone. We have more money, we have more health care, we have more of literally everything. More toys, more vacations, more places to go, more things to do, more entertainment. We have more than literally the rest of the world in many nations. Yet so many of us are not satisfied. We are not enjoying life. And Solomon deals with this in this passage that we're looking at this morning, because Solomon, when he was alive, he had the most. There was nobody that had more than Solomon. And in all honesty, I think that if Solomon were alive today, he would be jealous of us. Because, we have air-conditioned homes. We have the internet. We have 24/7 entertainment. I think he would envy our lives. But yet, so many of us are not experiencing happiness in life. And so this morning, as we look at this passage together, I want us to look at three things that kill happiness. And he deals with it in this passage that we're going to look at. The first one is thinking that enjoyment can be found apart from God. If you and I believe that we can enjoy life apart from God, that will ultimately impact our ability to be happy, if not altogether kill happiness in our life. Notice what he says beginning in verse 1 of Ecclesiastes chapter 6. He said, I have seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on mankind. Notice what he says, because I think this verse applies to a lot of us who live in this country. God gives some people wealth. Okay, that means money. Literally, God gives some people money. And for most of us, we may not think we have enough money, but I'm telling you, we have more than most. And God has given us that. God gives some people wealth, money. He gives them possessions. Okay, that's toys and assets. Nobody has more than us. Okay? In fact, we have so many toys and assets that we build these little things called storage areas to hold our toys and assets. Did you know that every homeless person in America could be housed in the storage units of the United States? That's how much storage we have for our possessions. And then he says, God gives them wealth, he gives them possessions, and honor. Honor means popularity, it means respect. It means that people hold that up and say, wow, that's how I would like to live. And you know what? If you go to many places in the world, when they look to the United States, we're kind of like the gold standard. Life in the United States. Can that be replicated in other places? So God has given some people all of this. He's given them wealth. He's given them possessions. He's given them honor so that they lack nothing their hearts desire. In other words, it indicates that this is the usual state of affairs for these people. These people that have wealth, possessions, and honor, that's how they usually live their life. I mean, they may have a bad day every once in a while. Things may not go like they wanted to go every once in a while. But overall, they have these three things most of the time. They have enough money, they have enough possessions, and they are respected and honored in their society and where they live most of the time. But notice how the verse ends. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them. And strangers enjoy them instead. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. When he talks about a grievous evil, he's talking about the frequency of how often this happens to people. That they have everything they need to enjoy life, but they don't. They don't enjoy it. They're not happy, they're not fulfilled, they're not satisfied. It's really interesting that what the internet, what social media does to us, because for many of us, we have what we need to enjoy life, but we will get on social media and look at someone else's life and say, I wished I had that. I wished I had that life. I wished I looked like that. I wished I had their opportunities. I wished I could go on that vacation. I wish my family looked like that family. I wish. And we have everything we need to have an enjoyable life, but we see someone else and say, I wished I had that. And you know what? Those people that have that wonderful life that you wished you had, many of them do not enjoy their life. And we're living vicariously through what we wished they had. And they're not even happy with it. And Solomon says, this is a grievous evil because it happens a lot. It's very frequent in the world. He goes on to say, a man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, he cannot enjoy his prosperity. That word prosperity, it means he can't enjoy the good things in life. Even if he lives 100 years and he has 100 kids. Of course, 100 kids doesn't sound like a lot of prosperity to me, but I mean, you know, they thought a little bit different in biblical times. He goes on to say he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive a proper burial. This means that his family and his friends, listen, that he's got all this stuff in life, okay? He's got everything he needs to enjoy life, but he doesn't receive a proper burial. What that means is that his family and friends, that he's got so many broken relationships that when he dies, no one comes to the funeral. Or they come and they say a lot of lies, they to make themselves feel better. But his relationships are so dysfunctional. He could have enjoyed life, but he couldn't get along with anybody. Then he says something that's kind of shocking. It's even shocking that we find it in the scriptures. Solomon says, I say that a stillborn child is better off than that man, than he. It comes without meaning, talking about the child, it comes without meaning, it departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy prosperity, fails to enjoy the good things in life. Do not all go to the same place. So you have to keep in mind that when Solomon wrote this, he's looking at life without a faith perspective, okay? He's leaving God out of what he's talking about at all. He's saying, this is what I see. This is the very best wisdom and knowledge and understanding I have, and this is what I see. Solomon is basically saying, I don't want to minimize miscarriages, or he's not either. He's not minimizing that or a child being stillborn. Cherry and I, we had a miscarriage early in our marriage, and I know what that feels like, and I know that's painful. And I've been there with other families when they've gone through things like this, and the parents, the grandparents, they say, why? Why would God allow this child to be conceived if it wasn't going to live? Solomon is asking the flip side of that question. Solomon is saying, why would God allow someone to live if they can't enjoy life? He's flipping that. When he talks about not enjoying life, he's talking about something that you and I call being bored. We have something, but we grow weary of it. We grow tired of it. We grow bored with it. And so we need something else. It's not enough. This that I've just obtained, it smells nice, it's fun, and it's good to have, and now I store it somewhere. I don't even use it anymore, and I need something else to bring some satisfaction to my life. This is what he's talking about. There was a book that came out several years ago. A lady wrote it. Her name was Patricia Meyer Spacks, and the name of the book was Boredom: The Literary History of the State of Mind. And in the book, the whole idea behind the book is that boredom, the idea of being bored, is largely a modern day problem. In other words, there's no accounts in history of people being bored. We're the first ones. We're the first ones in society that deal with this whole thing of, I get tired of stuff and I need more stuff. I get bored with what I have and I need more. And this lady, she throws this out there and basically says that boredom comes from really three things. It comes from the fact that we're the first society ever that has clung to the idea of leisure time. That's interesting, isn't it? Because we all seem to really want that. The problem is that when we have leisure time, we get bored with what leisures us. Then there's this notion of individual rights. She says that the more we cling to the idea that I deserve something because I exist, we go get it and we get bored with it. We don't appreciate it because we deserved it, right? I deserved that. So why would I appreciate that? So we get bored with it. And then ultimately, she says, the real reason behind boredom is the decline of Christianity in our society. Because when you follow Jesus Christ, he gives you a purpose for living. And you don't get bored with life. You don't get bored with stuff. You don't get bored because you're chasing the right things and walking closely with him, serving him, living for him, representing him. And as we do that, we find an enjoyment in life. And when we don't do that, we get bored. We get bored with it. If you don't believe what I'm saying, just watch all the commercials during the Super Bowl today. They'll remind you of what you need to be happy. Things you didn't even know you needed to be happy. And they're going to remind you, oh, you need this. You need this to be happy. This is what Solomon is talking about. So how do we push back about this? So one thing that Solomon does throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, and it kind of annoys me, is that he points out the problem, but he doesn't really give the answer. Not yet, not until he gets to the very end. But so along the way, we realize that, in fact, some of us sitting here in this room, some watching online right now, you might be thinking of your own life. Man, I'm bored with it. I'm bored with my job. I'm bored with my marriage. I'm bored with my kids. I'm bored with my level of income. I'm not satisfied. How do we push back? We find joy in life by being grateful to God. You see, a thankful, grateful heart chokes out boredom because a grateful heart acknowledges, God gave me this. God allows me to have this. God allows me to live where I live, to have the income that I have, to have the health that I have, to have the family that I have, to have the friends that I have, to have the toys that I have. God has allowed me to have this. I don't deserve it. God gave it to me. Because I could live somewhere else. I could have a different life. I could be with different people, but I'm not. I'm here. God gave me this. And a grateful heart chokes out boredom and removes it. And we fall in love with the giver instead of chasing more and more gifts, which is just another form of idolatry. The human heart will never be satisfied with idolatry. There's a God hole inside of us, and only God can fill it. Toys can't fill it. Relationships can't fill it. Money can't fill it. Being healthy can't fill it. Only God. When you and I become grateful for what we have, grateful that God in His grace has given it to us, well, then we appreciate it instead of getting bored with it. Colossians 4:2 says it this way: devote yourself to prayer with an alert mind and a thankful heart. A thankful heart. God, thank you. Thank you. The world's not perfect, but oh God, my world is better than most, and you gave it to me, and I didn't deserve it. Another thing that he talks about that kills happiness is feeding desire more than satisfaction. Notice what Solomon goes on to say. Everyone's toil is for their mouth, yet their appetite is never satisfied. That phrase, toil for their mouth, it talks about the human psyche, and the human psyche has a fatal flaw in it, and the fatal flaw is called self-preservation, self-enjoyment, self-centeredness, self-absorption, self-obsession. It's all about me. You ever heard the country song? It's all about me. I want to talk about me, mine. It's kind of a funny song, but it's true. Many of us grow weary of others. We want to talk about me. I sat with a guy the other day, I sat there and talked to him for 15 minutes. He loved talking about himself. The moment that I quit asking about him, the conversation ended. He didn't want to know anything about me. I'm okay, that's all right. I just thought it's ironic. That's how many of us live. It's all about me. It's all about me. And we're never satisfied. We toil for ourselves. We toil to take care of ourselves, but we are never satisfied. Just like getting hungry. We eat, we have a meal, we're full. 3 hours later, I need a snack. I need something else. Our entire lives are like that. The more that we pursue self-pleasure, the more elusive the goal becomes. It's a moving target. We can't seem to hit it. The more I try to live for myself, I can't please myself. I'm not satisfied. Listen, self-preservation, taking care of ourselves, it may add years to our life, but rarely does it add life to our years. There are people who have really taken good care of themselves. They have pampered themselves, and they live a long time, and they're not happy. They're not happy. With each new disappointment that we move into trying to make ourselves happy, we engage in that, we spend money for that, we work for that, and then we walk away and say, well, that wasn't it. Let me go try something else. That's what he's talking about. He says, what advantage have the wise over fools? What do the poor, that word poor here, it means uneducated. What do the poor, uneducated gain by knowing how to conduct themselves before others? So if he's saying if all we do is to live to satisfy ourselves, then there is no advantage. If we're just living for ourselves, there's no advantage to being wise. If we're just living for ourselves, there's no advantage to improving ourselves. There's no advantage to educating ourselves and learning people skills if it's just about me. Does that make sense? That's what Solomon is saying. He says, better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. In other words, he's saying it is better to have a little and really enjoy it than to dream about having a lot and never get it. And unfortunately, that's how many of us live our lives. Do you know there are so many people that miss their entire life because they're planning for the life they want to have? And life just passes them by. So much they could have lived and enjoyed and loved, people that they could have impacted and people who could have impacted them. And life could have been rich. It could have been rich. But they missed it because they were planning for a life that they wanted to have instead of the life God was trying to give them. This is what Solomon is talking about. How do we push back against this? To find joy in life, you and I must learn to practice contentment. And it's practice. Contentment's not a thing that we obtain one day and then we have it for the rest of life. Contentment is something that we practice every day. Paul talks about it this way in Philippians. He says, I have learned. Listen, please let that stick out in your mind, because we need to learn this, and it's possible. I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Many times when people have that verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, they got it on their t-shirt, they got it on their cap, they're trying to obtain something in life that they don't have. And they're saying, Christ will help me get what I don't have. Christ will help me accomplish what I'm trying to do. And that's not what Paul is saying at all. Paul is saying, through Christ, I've learned how to be content. He allows me to be content in every situation. This idea of being content. He says, I've learned how to be content. That word content, it means self-contained, adequate, needing nothing from the outside. Paul says, I've learned how to do this through Christ. Through Christ, I've learned how to be self-contained. Through Christ, I've learned how to not need something from the outside to bring peace to my heart. I've learned how to do that. You see, the ability to enjoy life is a matter of character, not circumstances. And many of us believe, or at least we act as though we believe, that our happiness in life is dependent upon our circumstances in life. But with Christ, it's our character that brings happiness, not our circumstances. Last summer, I got to go to Uganda, to a refugee camp. Preached a message at a church at a refugee camp in Uganda. I've never been so nervous before in preaching a message to a group of people. What does someone who lives a life as comfortable as I live say to people who have nothing? They have no purpose. They have no jobs. They don't even have a country. They don't have citizenship. They don't have hope. What could I possibly say to them? Yet, one of the most content people I know in the world lives on that refugee camp. How did he learn that? He learned it through Christ, not through anything else. And you and I, if we're going to enjoy life, we have to learn how to be content. If we don't, it kills our happiness. There's a third thing that Solomon brings out in this passage that will kill our happiness, and that's fighting God's boundaries. He goes on to say in verse 10, whatever exists has already been named, and what humanity is has been known. No one can contend with someone who is stronger. We need to unpack this for just a moment. He starts off by saying, whatever exists has already been named. In other words, Solomon is saying the world exists. Well, who created the world? God created the world. He created it, and when he created it, he named it. He named the things that you and I take for granted in the world every day. In Jewish culture and in Jewish thinking, when you named something, you described its character and you fixed its identity. It could not be changed. That is its name. Does that make sense? So when God created the world, he also created humans. He created what the Bible calls man. The word man means from dust. And that's all we are, people. No matter what we do, he has named us. We came from dust, and guess what? We return to dust. I don't care what titles we hold, how much money we have, what accomplishments we do in our life, no matter with the kids we raise, or the family we build, or the company that we put out there. When we die, we go back to dust. Why? Because that's what we are. And no matter what we do, we can't change it. Does that make sense? He named it. He fixed it. That is the character of humanity. And it is fixed. It will not be changed. We came from dust. We return to dust. And he named all kinds of things like light and darkness. It is what it is it not? That's what we call it, and we can't undo it. We can't make light something else. He fixed its name. It is what it is. Darkness. He fixed its name. It is what it is. What about land and sea? Right? I mean, it's fixed. It is what it is. It doesn't matter what we do. Land will always be land. The oceans will always be the oceans. And we can't seem to undo them. He named all kinds of things. He named sin. He named it. He called it what it is. Oh, we can argue with him, and we do. That's what Solomon is talking about when he says right here, he says, no one can contend with someone who is stronger. In other words, Solomon is saying it's useless to argue with God when he names something. He is stronger than us. He has set boundaries in life. He has named things. And we can debate and argue and say it's not that way as much as we want to, but he wins. And you think about all the things that God has named, all the sins that God has named. He says, this is sin. I have named it. That is its character. It is what it is. And you and I can't undo it. God named them male and female. And no matter what we do, we can't undo it. And we look pretty foolish trying to. God named it marriage. He named what it looked like. He defined it. He said, this is what it is. We can argue and debate. We can say it's not that way as much as we want to. But it's pretty foolish because he's stronger than we are. God named and defined sex. He said, this is who it's for. This is who it's between. This is the right time to do it. And you and I, we can try to toy with that all we want to. But he named it. He created it. He set the boundaries for it. And we can try to operate outside those boundaries, but it only kills our happiness. Because he's stronger. And he named it. And when you and I, when we start pushing up against what God has named, what he has defined, what he has said, this is it, and we try to push back and say, no, wait a minute, Lord, here's a possibility. Wait a minute, Lord, this I can do. Wait a minute, Lord, this is okay. Wait a minute, God, that doesn't work in our society. God says, okay, try. You're only killing your own happiness. Because he named it. And he defined it. He goes on to say, Solomon does, the more words, the less meaning. Isn't that what our world feels like when we start pushing up against things that he has named? The more words we try to use to redefine what God has defined, the less meaning. And how does that profit anyone? How do any of us gain from that? What do we gain from all the words we use to try to defend the fact that we just looked at God and flipped him off and said, we'll do it like we want to do it? It kills our happiness. Solomon goes on to say, for who knows what is good for a person in life? During the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow. Who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they are gone? What does Solomon mean? Solomon's not questioning life after death. He's saying people have no control over what happens on earth after they die. So how can we make good decisions today? How can we do what's best for all of us today when tomorrow I have no control over someone who might say, let's forget God and the boundaries he's set up? How can we make good decisions if the people of tomorrow are going to fight God's boundaries? And how do we push back against that? To you and I, we must find joy in life and quit fighting God. Quit fighting God in our lives. We all fight God. I don't care how religious you think you are or how closely you think you're walking with the Lord. All of us fight God in our life. When he has defined what is right, what is wrong, what we should do or should not do. And we fight when we say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to live that way. That's not how I want to behave in this moment. That's not the priority I have right now, Lord. And so we fight him. And we just kill our own happiness. You know, have you ever had a child, like, you ever had a child that doesn't care about school? You know, I'm not doing my homework. I'm not going to do what the teacher asked me to do. I mean, I'll go to school. I'll be there, but I'm not there. You ever had a kid like that? Maybe you were like that, right? Chris is saying, I was that. That was me. Listen, here's the thing. And it's really hard to communicate this to a child when they don't care about school. But when they fail a class, it doesn't hurt the parent at all. Does it? I mean, come on. Tell me, Mom, Dad, have you ever received a pay cut in your salary because your kids failed a class? It doesn't impact the parent at all, does it? It doesn't impact our quality of life in the sense of our opportunities that we have. My opportunities aren't reduced in life if my kids don't care anything about school. Nope, the only opportunities, the only things that are taken away are theirs. Right? Their opportunities are lost. When you and I fight God, it doesn't hurt God at all. It's not like God is somehow hindered or hampered or now he can't do what he used to do because we keep fighting him. No, it only hurts us. It only hurts our opportunities, not his. In fact, it doesn't change his plan at all. He's not impacted by it. But you and I are greatly impacted by it. It kills our happiness. Do you know in the Bible, in the scriptures, the name Sovereign Lord is used 292 times in the Bible? And that God's sovereignty, in other words, his ability to name things and say, that's it. You can argue with me all you want, but that's it. That is what it is. I have named it. Its character is fixed. His sovereignty is referenced 627 times in the Bible. Listen, we can fight God all we want. We will not win. We will not win. And it's our happiness that gets squashed. He's still love. He's still gracious. He's still kind. He hasn't changed. His character doesn't change at all because we fight him. He is who he is. But our lives are greatly impacted when we fight him. I'm going to lead us in a prayer. When I get through praying, Pastor Stephen's going to come and he's going to close our time together today. But as we get ready to move into this part of our time together, I just got to ask you, are you bored? Because if you're bored with life, that's a spiritual problem, not an entertainment problem. If you're bored. Are you trying to feed your desire instead of just learning to be content and practicing that? Are you fighting God? You know if you are. He's already pointed it out to you. Listen, the Spirit of God's moving in this place. I don't have the power. I don't possess the power to point out where you're fighting God. But he does. And he points it out. What are you going to do with that? Because those things, that's what's killing our happiness. Let's pray. Father, your word is so powerful. Lord, it speaks to where we are right now. It just amazes me, Lord, that something that was written so long ago could speak so relevantly today. Only you could do that. So, Lord, as you speak to us now in this moment, in this room, Father, may we be honest with ourselves. May we be honest with you if we're bored or if we're not content or if we're just fighting you. Lord, may we be honest with that right now. For our own good. Lord, it doesn't hurt you if we keep denying these things. It doesn't impact you or what you're doing and who you are, but Lord, it greatly impacts us. So give us humble hearts. Give us honest hearts to admit these things, Lord, that might be going on inside of us so that we can turn away from them and turn to you. Come and receive the grace that Jesus Christ offered through the cross and taste happiness in our life. Lord, I pray this in Jesus' name.